Greetings, Alex. How goes your London lockdown?
We've just been gone to tier four. That means that we cannot visit anybody else, and most of our shops are closed down. So for many of us, it's going to be a lonely Christmas.
You have been working with the great director Steve McQueen on his Small Axe series on Amazon Prime. You're a writer on the series, but you are also the subject of the fourth installment, which is titled Alex Wheatle. Were you a writer on that installment as well?
Steve offered the opportunity for me to write the episode, but I felt because I was so close to it, and also there's some very traumatic scenes early on in the film. I felt it was probably better for someone else who was had a bit of distance away from it to tackle that, because I felt it could be too emotional for me, and it might cause me some triggers and so on. So yeah, I decided that it's probably best for somebody else to take the reins of that episode over.
And where did Steve get the idea of making the episode focused on you?
We was meeting every day for about 2 to 3 months, and we was discussing and debating what issues and themes should be included in the Small Axe series. And one morning, Steve bounced in and he said he had this idea in his head that he wanted to relate the tale of a young black man who has been suffering from British institutions like prison, young offenders institutions, and children's home. And one of my fellow writers, my fellow creatives, Alistair Siddons, he looked at me and said, "Alex, that is you. You had experience of being in children's homes, prison, and so forth." And Steve looked at me and said, "Alex, you want me to, can you tell us your story?" And so for the rest of that day, I related my journey. And at the end of it, Steve said, "My God, we have to make this into a film." That's how it came about. So by chance, really.
Your novel, Homegirl, focuses on a girl named Naomi who is caught up in the foster care system. Was that inspired by your own experience in foster care and children's homes?
Yes, very much so, Johnny. I always wondered what would the care experience be like now in 2020 or this modern decade, to compare it to my experience back in the 60s and 70s. And once I did my research, and I discovered that many young people in the care system never felt at home, were always shifted around to different foster carers and so forth. And so that's how the character of Naomi came about. That sense of isolation, loneliness, that sense of naivety.
What led you to make the decision to feature a white girl caught up in the foster care system?
Well, Johnny, I guess in the popular culture, we're always seeing narratives where it's always the white caregiver or the white savior figure comes along and saves the young black boy or the young black girl. And so I felt that it would be very interesting for me to flip this narrative. And so we have the black savior couple, if you like. So I thought that was interesting for me to tackle with, and hopefully be interesting for the readers too.
In the Small Axe episode, one of the things it portrays is you landing in jail after the 1981 Brixton riots, and you sort of undergoing a raising of your political consciousness. What one or two books would you say that you discovered while in jail that were most responsible for the raising of your consciousness?
Well, absolutely. There was The Black Jacobins by the great C.L.R. James. That really turned me around politically, made me politically sensitive, if you like. And for the first time, I actually learned about my Caribbean history that's never been taught to me in any schools that I've attended. So that one in particular. And then whilst in prison, I read mostly the Harlem Renaissance writers like James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Langston Hughes. I was introduced to those writers very early on in my sentence by Simeon, who had this fantastic, incredible collection of black books. So that was great for me.
And you had not read James Baldwin or Richard Wright before then?
I never even heard of them before I entered prison. So it was a great education for me to discover these incredible writers, because I always thought growing up where I did, in this suburban kind of white-dominated area, where I was surrounded by texts like Oliver Twist and so forth. I didn't know that Black fiction existed. I really didn't. And so when I discovered it, I was away, and I was just enraptured with it. And, it really was my education.
So what was your initial inspiration for your brand new young adult novel, Kane Warriors?
With Kane Warriors, Johnny, I guess I've come full circle, because very much I was inspired by the Black Jacobeans and Toussaint Louverture. And for me, Taki represents that kind of heroism. Very little is known about him, especially his former life in the Akan area of Ghana before he came to Jamaica. But he was a figure. Not even Bob Marley really. I remember his song when he referenced Paul Bogle. I think he referenced Sam Sharp, among others, and Marcus Garvey. He did not reference Taki. And so me being a Bob Marley fan and geek, I was kind of looking through his albums, saying, where's Taki? Where's Taki? Even in the Mighty Diamonds Right Time album as well, I was thinking, where's Taki? Where's Taki? And he always deserved a story, or that revolt deserved a story. For me, it's just as important as the Spartan 300, if you like, going through history. And so it really should be part of world history, I believe. And that's how important I felt Taki's story was, and 1760 revolt was, because there's no doubt that revolt influenced what happened in Haiti 30 years later. And so I was astonished that no fiction had been made out of this narrative, or this true narrative, because it's such an inspiring tale. It really is. And so once I researched some of it, I was away, with the music. I always write with music when I begin. I had Burning Spear on. I had Bob Marley's Heathen on loop, the live version that we see in the concert he had in 1977 at the Rainbow Theatre in North London. I'm a bit of a geek like this, so forgive me. So with that music surrounding me, I just launched into it. And I felt that it deserved to be written how the characters spoke, in dialect, in patois, if possible. So because I really wanted to create a sense that these people were Jamaican, and they were Jamaican heroes.
I can't speak to the UK audience, but I can say in the US, there are some parents that can get concerned about their children reading books that have, graphic depictions of violence in them. Not just parents, but, conservative politicians and others. But in writing a book like this, you didn't really have an option, did you, for avoiding violence?
No, I had no option. And when you look in world history, thinking about the American Civil War, any major revolution that's ever occurred in world history, there's bound to be young people and teenagers, young adults involved. So why is it so wrong? Or, why does it get the backup of maybe conservative commentators to actually see their lives depicted, and then, stories from their perspective? For me, that's very important. It's no different from what Anne Frank wrote about. And she was basically a child, and she's referencing extreme violence in her life and her knowledge. So for me, I'm just representing the same thing. If you, people, historians will say, read the Iliad, about Hector and Achilles. But once you read the narrative of that, it's extremely violent, but that's considered a world classic. So for me, there's a bit of hypocrisy going on here.